Hello and welcome back to another session on women's writing in English. We continue with the garden party. We stopped with Laura rushing to attend the call from Kitty, and there we see Laura's work girl fantasy coming to an end, and she returns to fulfilling her real class position. Her ability to speak like her mother without stuttering when she speaks to her friend Kitty is very evident. And this shows that Laura does have the potential to be at home in her life also, to be a part of her social status, and therefore her knowledge of the working class is very feeble, or very little, very weak. Okay, and we also analyzed Mrs. Sheridan's comment and how she likes to control others, and how she's concerned with appearances. It is also seen when she orders Lily. She has ordered Lily, and that itself shows how much her concern for appearances. Whereas Laura's sensitivity stands contrast to her mother's. Okay, and then we have Sadie. Okay, Sadie is the maid, and she is like, or little more than a messenger, and she's emptied of all emotions and personality. Laura says it's a mistake. Nobody ever ordered so many, and you find Sadie looking stunned at these many lilies, and that shows Mrs. Sheridan's another, as we discussed earlier, that shows her concern with appearances and her extravagance also. And if you look at Sadie, through Sadie we find the Sheridans or the family's indifference to the working people. It includes including their servants and their neighbors. Okay, and they are intimately, or they have no intimate connection with them. Laura's sudden, involuntary and intensively physical response to the flowers suggests a kind of awakening. Okay, sexual awakening. There is a tinge of it, of sexual awakening there. Deep at heart, the blaze of lilies she felt were in her fingers, on her lips, growing in her heart. Very romantically it's portrayed, and it also suggests a kind of sexual awakening. And Laura's artistic sensibility again manifests in the way she is deeply moved by the beauty of living things around her, whereas Mrs. Sheridan bought these lilies, so many lilies, this excessive number of lilies, so that she could finally have enough. When she was walking past, she walked past the florist, she found these lilies and she thought she needs them. It's also a kind of show off. Yeah, she wanted to show the people coming to the party that she is indeed, she cares so much about the appearances and how she decorates her house, and thereby shows her high position in the social status. So she likes to strut about as a peacock. Okay. Laura, on the other hand, appreciates the beauty. It's not about it's not about the extravagance or the luxury, or it's nothing to do with showing off. It is all about her aesthetic sensibility, how she is able to appreciate the beauty of all living things around her. So it's not just the lilies that she speaks about, she also speaks about lavender, right? In the beginning, when the laborers, when they took a small when they snuffed that lavender, a small piece of it, she felt it, she was awed by it, because lavender is a common flower, and therefore from that we understand Laura as a very sensitive person who appreciates the beauty of the living things around her. Okay. Laura can appreciate them regardless of their quantity. So she thinks that there has been some mistake. Again, she loves these beautiful flowers. She likes them. It's extremely beautiful, extremely romantic. But again, look at the way she says there has been some mistake, because she feels that buying so many of them is indeed an extravagance. But Mrs. Sheridan states and reasserts that she has indeed made no mistake. She has indeed bought these many lilies. That shows how she continues to run everything behind the scene, even as she professed to have no control over this year's party. In the beginning, Sheridan says, "No, I leave everything to you children. You should be taking care of all these things. Now onwards, you are the ones, you have all grown up, you are the ones who are supposed to take charge of the parties and all those important things in the house, to run the house." Though she says all that, she states and reasserts that she continues to run everything, but that happens behind the scene, and she in fact controls everything. Okay, so that shows her dominant nature. Mansfield emphasizes the contrast between Catherine Mansfield emphasizes the contrast between Jo's and Laura also. Jo's is a sister, Laura's sister, and she emphasizes the contrast between Jo's and Laura in the next few section of the short story. You will find that. So let's start. "It's quite right," she said calmly. "Yes, I ordered them. Aren't they lovely?" She pressed Laura's arm. "I was passing the shop yesterday and I saw them in the window. And I suddenly thought, for once in my life, I shall have enough canna lilies. The garden party will be a good excuse." So that shows her extravagance, right? So it's not about the aesthetic quality, or it's not about enjoying the beauty of these flowers. Instead, it's her extravagance and her, she wants to just show these to her friends, and garden party will be a good excuse. That's what she says. So that canna lilies, she decides to have these canna lilies, and the whole garden party becomes an excuse only to show off these canna lilies to her invitees. "But I thought you said you didn't mean to interfere," said Laura. Sadie had gone. The florist man was still outside at his van. She put her arm around her mother's neck and gently, very gently, she bit her mother's ear. So that as I told you earlier, indirectly suggests Mrs. Sheridan's dominant nature, where she likes to control anything and everything, even though she professed to say that she does not have, or she does not want to control everything. She leaves everything to her children, even though she says that everything is, she has a thread in her hand. It's in her hand. She pulls the thread according to where she the direction she wishes to. My darling child, you wouldn't like a logical mother, would you? Don't do that. Here's the man. He carried more lilies still, another whole tray. Bang them up just inside the door, on both sides of the porch, please, said Mrs. Sheridan. Don't you agree, Laura? Oh, I do, Mother. In the drawing room, Meg, Jo's, and good little hands had at last succeeded in moving the piano. Now, if we put this Chesterfield against the wall, move everything out of the room except the chairs, don't you think? Quite. Hans move these table into the smoking room and bring a sweeper to take these marks off the carpet. And one moment, Hans. Jo's loved giving orders to the servants, and they loved obeying her. She always made them feel they were taking part in some drama. Tell Mother and Miss Laura to come here at once. Very good, Miss Jo's. She turned to Meg. I want to hear what the piano sounds like, just in case I'm asked to sing this afternoon. Let's try over this life is weary. Pom, ta-ta-ta-ti-ta. The piano burst out so passionately that Jo's face changed. She clasped her hands. She looked mournfully and enigmatically at her mother and Laura, and they came in. So see how, look at the cadence of this prose as such. How rhythmic, how beautifully Catherine Mansfield has written. Pom ta ta ti ta. See, the piano bursts out so passionately. So Jo's is sitting there. Her fingers are on the keys, and she plays the piano, and suddenly the music seemed to burst out, into the air, and Jo's face changed. She is able to sing or tune a beautiful piece of music, and they play the song "This Life Is Weary" in the piano. But at the word goodbye, and although the piano sounded more desperate than ever, her face broke into a brilliant, dreadfully unsympathetic smile. Aren't I in good voice, Mummy? She beamed. Again, she sings the song. She sings to the piano and asks her mother for opinion. But now Sadie interrupted them. What is it, Sadie? If you please, Cook says you have got the flags for the sandwiches. The flags for the sandwiches, Sadie? Echoed Mrs. Sheridan dreamily. And the children knew by her face that she hadn't got them. She's forgotten. Let me see. And she said to Sadie firmly, Tell Cook I'll let her have them in 10 minutes. Sadie went. Now, Laura, said her mother quickly. Come with me into the smoking room. I've got the names somewhere on the back of an envelope. You'll have to write them out for me. Meg, go upstairs this minute and take that wet thing off your head. Jos, run and finish dressing this instant. Do you hear me, children? Or I shall have to tell your father when he comes home tonight. And Jos, pacify Cook if you do go into the kitchen, will you? I am terrified of her this morning. The envelope was found at last behind the dining room clock, though how it got there Mrs. Sheridan could not imagine. One of you children must have stolen it out of my bag, because I remember vividly cream cheese and lemon curd. Have you done that? Yes. Egg, and Mrs. Sheridan held the envelope away from her. It looks like mice. It can't be mice, can it? Olive, pet, said Laura, looking over her shoulder. Yes, of course, olive. What a horrible combination it sounds, egg and olive. There, we've finished at last, and Laura took them off to the kitchen. She found Joe there, pacifying the cook, who did not look at all terrifying. I have never seen such exquisite sandwiches, said Joe's rapturous voice. How many kinds did you say there were, cook? 15? 15, Miss Joes. Well, cook, I congratulate you. Cook swept up crust with long sandwich knife and smiled broadly. Godber's come, announced Sadie, issuing out of the pantry. She had seen the man pass the window. That meant the cream puffs had come. Godber's were famous for their cream puffs. Nobody ever thought of making them at home. Bring them in and put them on the table, my girl, ordered cook. Sadie brought them in and went back to the door. Of course, Laura and Joes were far too grown up to really care about such things. All the same, they couldn't help agreeing that puffs looked very attractive. Very. Cook began arranging them, shaking off the extra icing sugar. Don't they carry one back to all one's parties? Said Laura. I suppose they do, said practical Joes, who never liked to be carried back. They look beautifully light and feathery, I must say. Have one each, my dears, said cook in her comfortable voice. Your ma won't know. Oh, impossible. Fancy cream puffs so soon after breakfast? The very idea made one shudder. All the same, 2 minutes later, Joes and Laura were licking their fingers with that absorbed inward look that only comes from whipped cream. Let's go into the garden. Out by the back way, suggested Laura. I want to see how the men are getting on the marquee. They're such painfully nice men. But the back door was blocked by cook, Sadie, Godber's man, and Hans. Something had happened. So we'll stop there and let's analyze up to this. So the scene jumps to the drawing room where Hans, a servant, and Meg and Joes, 2 other Sheridan daughters, have finished moving the piano. Joes tells Joes tells Meg to play the piano so that she can practice, in case she's asked to sing, she can practice her song. And they play the piano and they sing the song, This Life is Weary. And then Joes asks Mrs. Sheridan how it was. Okay, so Joes performs primarily for her mother's approval and breaks into a young child's voice when she asks for it. Whereas Joe's attitude reflects her mother's obsession with hoarding beauty as display of status, Laura continues to be the only Sheridan who can actually experience joy at beautiful things. Now, indeed, that the notion that This Life is Weary would ever be an appropriate song for the garden party suggests that Sheridans and their guests are so sheltered from the suffering that poor people in the community experience that they would, like Joes, take pleasure in the song's tune without recognizing or relating with what the words actually say. So This Life is Weary, that song, though they are singing, it does not actually come from their heart, because they have absolutely no idea of the difficulties and problems faced or the sufferings faced by the poor in their community. So the words are just plain. Even when they are singing these songs, when they are listening to these songs, they are just plain words with no meaning at all. Meaning to them, that is. Okay. And then you have the next section where Sadie interrupts to tell Mrs. Sheridan that the cook needs a flag for sandwiches. Mrs. Sheridan has forgotten, and the children have understood that she has forgotten. Okay, she is unable to admit that she forgot the sandwich flags, because doing so she would be an admission that the servants know better than she does. Likewise, she also accuses the children of hiding the envelope because she cannot face the possibility that she was the one who lost it. So she blames her children. Mrs. Sheridan also evades her own responsibilities for the flags by making Laura write them. Her fear of the cook is very peculiar. She treats the cook differently than how she treats the rest of the servants. Perhaps this is because the cook, unlike Sadie and Hans and the delivery man, is actually responsible for a significant component of the party's success, because everything depends on the cook. And not just that, the cook is Mrs. Sheridan does not cook. It is the cook who does everything, right from the one who serves them delightful lunch, breakfast and dinner and everything. They are in fact indirectly, though the cook is their servant, they are indirectly dependent on the cook. And Mrs. Sheridan treats the cook well, differently from the rest of the servant class. And then you have Laura bringing the sandwich flags, and Jose congratulates. Jose has been already asked by Mrs. Sheridan to go and pacify the cook. And Jose congratulates the cook on different kinds of sandwiches that she has made. The cook simply smiles, and from the pantry you find or hear Sadie announcing that the Godber's man had come. Godber's is a bakery, or they are from the bakers. Okay, they are famous for their cream puffs. And the cook orders Sadie to bring them inside and then begins arranging them for the party. And Laura and Jose, they stand there, and Laura remarks that they remind of her of the past parties, the previous parties that they had, and Jose agrees to it. The cook tells the girls, asks them to have puffs each, and she tells them that Mrs. Sheridan would not mind, but they are hesitant. They feel that it's too soon after breakfast. It's a bit too heavy. It would be a bit too heavy on them. The cook is just doing her job, but Jose congratulates the cook, as though making the sandwiches were some sort of meaningful personal accomplishment, which reflects her inability to understand that others have to work due to their economic status. So she tries to pamper her, and she tells her that she was doing something very something she's some sort of it's some sort of personal accomplishment that the cook has done, and that shows see, if this cook belonged to a very high-fi society, then she wouldn't have been working for these people, and in fact she would have been a well-known person, or she might have had or started a bakery herself, and she would have been well known. So that's very evident that these people are unable to understand the feelings of the lesser unfortunate people. And when the cook asks them to eat or take pastry, just like they say that they eat at the wrong hour means breaking social conventions of food and drink. You may have seen that when Laura tried to hide the bread and butter when she saw the workmen, because eating outside, and that to a woman of her position, eating outside would seem to break the social conventions that the high society has, especially on etiquette. And also the sandwich flags also symbolize this. Catherine Mansfield's voice comes through in Laura's nostalgia for past parties. After all, the Sheridan estate and Laura's characters are, loosely based on Catherine Mansfield's own childhood experience. Again, Mrs. Sheridan sees excess as impressive. She wants everything in excess. The cream puffs she has ordered, and also there's so much icing that the cook has to remove some of them. So extra icing, she has asked them to put extra icing. So that shows Sheridan's nature, or she likes everything in excessive, or she feels that excess is impressive. You may have seen that in lilies also, when she ordered the lilies. It's a lot. She's very extravagant. Okay. And then we stopped with Godber, Sadie and Hans and the cook looking horrified, and they're saying something. So we'll take the next section, the important section, where the plot or the theme actually comes in. We shall do that in the next video. So thank you and keep safe.